What if powerful interests are invested in perpetuating the plastic crisis? Have you ever stopped to consider who profits from pumping out the excessive plastic packaging choking our planet? In this episode, we investigate the corporations behind the single-use plastic economy and their tactics to evade accountability. Since plastic gained prominence after World War II, the fossil fuel and petrochemical industries have reaped vast profits from its proliferation. But they've shifted blame towards irresponsible consumers to protect their bottom line while avoiding responsibility for the waste crisis created by their products. Major oil, gas, and chemicals companies, along with consumer brands, rely on public ignorance of who really drives plastic production and pollution. Their marketing and lobbying shape how we view this epidemic. It's time we draw back the curtain on the commercial interests at the root of the plastics crisis. Our everyday plastics originate from fossil fuel giants like Exxon, Shell, and Chevron that provide the raw materials. These oil and gas conglomerates saw an opportunity in the burgeoning plastics industry to diversify from fuel. By investing heavily in chemicals, polymers, and plastic production, they grew their empires to gargantuan sizes. But this required opening vast new markets for their plastic products. Lobbying by chemical trade groups like the American Chemistry Council, with members like Dow and DuPont, led to single-use plastics replacing reusable materials across consumer goods and packaging. Once ubiquitous, these fossil-derived plastics became a cash cow, and the producers' profits soared by pumping out ever higher volumes at ever cheaper costs through scaled-up supply chains. With little competition, petrochemical monopolies took over, while oversight and accountability lagged behind. But the true costs of their plastic products were deferred down the line. Waste management was not the priority. Production and sales were. By driving reckless hyperconsumption of plastic, these industries generated garbage at exceeding rates with little responsibility for its afterlife impacts. And so today, the largest and most profitable corporations in human history are now scrambling to avoid culpability and regulation of the very profitable pollution they've created. Parts of the fossil fuel industry have even rebranded as defenders of the plastic-clogged environment they themselves helped despoil. For instance, Shell recently pledged to build waste collection infrastructure in developing nations most afflicted by the developed world's plastic waste exports. This allows Shell to appear as an environmental steward addressing plastic pollution rather than a petrochemical giant profiting from its very sources. The onus remains placed on consumers and waste managers, not the producers that banked on plastics disposability and externalized the repercussions. The plastics industry maintains the status quo through deceptive tactics that divert attention from reforming their polluting commercial practices. Big plastic wages, massive lobbying and advertising campaigns to fend off the threat of regulations that may slow plastic output. Plastics lobbying now dwarfs that of even the fossil fuels industry from whence it came. Nearly $200 million has been spent advocating against plastic bag bans, bottle bills, and other measures aimed at curbing plastic waste. Industry groups like the Plastics Industry Association and American Beverage Association fight fiercely against any plastic reduction policies. But they disingenuously blame litter bugs, instead of producers, for using but improperly disposing of the very products they profit from. This clever PR war simultaneously shames the consumer while protecting the commercial interests most responsible for our plasticized economy. Only through exposing this deception can we trace the plastic epidemic back to its industrial origins. Major consumer brands like Nestle, Coca-Cola, Starbucks, and Unilever also bear huge responsibility for the proliferation of plastic packaging, much of it unnecessary. Bottled beverage companies could easily refill their plastic bottles, yet they reject bottle bills that would cut into sales of new bottles. The zero-waste movement threatens their reliance on a throwaway culture that treats plastic as disposable after a single use. But meaningful change will not come voluntarily from companies invested in maintaining the profitable plastic status quo, despite their sustainability pledges. In truth, Industry has no incentive to curb plastics production as long as profits remain unchecked by environmental costs. Plastic producers are forecast to increase output by 30% in the next 5 years to satisfy growing demand. The cycle continues as consumers are hooked on convenience, marketers drive plastic consumption, and waste piles up in vulnerable communities. But out of sight is not out of mind. A powerful awareness of industry's role in prolonging the plastic epidemic is spreading. People are mobilizing against the corporate tactics that erode public and environmental health for private gains. Grassroots movements target producers through anti-pollution ordinances, plastic bans, and producer responsibility bills. The tides may finally be turning towards holding manufacturers accountable for their products' life cycle impacts. But consumer brands continue peddling convenience packaged in excessive plastic while diverting blame. Lawmakers must stand up to the powerful corporate lobbies attempting to stall action. The choice between public interest and private profit has never been starker. We cannot shop our way out of this systemic crisis or be shamed as its source while industry cashes in. Subscribe and hit the like button to join the movement holding polluters accountable. In the next episode, we investigate how the global community is responding to the plastic epidemic through grassroots activism and policy initiatives. Don't miss Episode 6, Global Response, How the World is Reacting, as we explore signs of hope in the fight against plastic pollution. See you next time!